Thank you for listening to the We Witches 3 podcast. If you love our content, consider supporting us on our Patreon page. Our podcast will always be free, but our production cost is not. There's a considerable amount of time and money that goes into every episode. We love what we do, and we believe that we are giving you a fresh perspective on the tarot and witchy community. But we would also love the support of our listeners. www.patreon.com/WeWitches3 to go and check out if any of our offers interest you. We have created all kinds of witchy and psychic content for you to enjoy. That's www.patreon.com/WeWitches3. This is the We Witches 3 podcast, where you will hear the opinion of 3 seasoned witches who are tired of glossy, tunnel vision, love and light accolades about serious metaphysical topics. Your hosts, Charlene, Maria Sewell, and Heather Woodworth, have been practicing witches and professional psychics for over 20 years. They not only have the experience, but they have the research to back it up. So get comfortable on your brooms, grab a snack, and get ready for a wild ride.
Hi guys, today we are talking about the recent earthquakes in California and whether or not we have entered the end times. The end is nigh. Or is it? We're going to refer a lot of different sources and see what people are talking about, what signs and signals have pointed to this, and what other end time signs have come about. So this has been a research heavy podcast, but I think y'all will be interested. We are talking Ragnarok, we are talking Revelations, we are talking astrology and eclipses, which we are currently in between 2 of, and we are talking about earthquake predictions, both metaphysical and scientific. It's going to be fun. For those of you who aren't aware, on July 4th, California experienced what it thought was an earthquake of 6.4, the largest earthquake it's had in 20 years, only to discover on July 5th that that was actually a foreshock for a 7.1 earthquake. The biggest earthquake since the Northridge earthquake back in the mid-90s. So people are talking. There was a lot of fear that there were bigger and more common earthquakes coming, like more frequent earthquakes coming up, and possible volcanic eruptions. But luckily, that did not happen. But there was a lot of talk, a lot of concerns, and people are seeing it as signs. So one of the things that I'm looking at here is this really intensive website that I found while doing research, and it is called Ditrium. It is, I'm not really sure where they're even located. They're not located in the US because these numbers are very British looking. But they track the earthquakes all over the world. They use the European earthquake measurement system, so they're like M-class earthquakes, according to the magnetic fields that are emitted by various planets. So it's kind of astronomy-based, which coincides well with astrology. And based on the planetary movements, they've done fairly well about predicting seismic activity all over the world. So they did predict the earthquakes on July 4th and 5th, but their predictions are usually like, we expect seismic activity from, July 1st to 6th.
Oh, okay, so it's not like the day of.
Right, but in this area. So we expect an earthquake in California between July 1st and 6th.
But how come we didn't know about it? So how come this wasn't in the news? Because we live in California. Charlie and I live in California. And how come we don't hear about this kind of stuff? Just out of curiosity.
The predictions from Ditrium?
Yeah.
Well, they are not an American organization.
Oh.
Yeah. So they're in the Netherlands. It was started by a astronomist who started it as a pet personal project on the side of his work, and then it's taken off since then. He started it over 10 years ago. So it's not part of the early warning system in the US at all. It's just like this scientist's side project that has since taken off. So it wasn't in association with any organizations or anything like that, but it does have a pretty good track record. And if you go to their homepage, you can see their predictions live, like they have their current prediction up there right now. And they also have it's almost like a blog roll of all their previous predictions. And they're dated with the time and everything. So you can see what their accuracy was like. And then they also have on the sidebar a list of all the most recent earthquakes. Predictions for El Salvador, Peru, New Britain, New Guinea, Indonesia, all over the world. So they're kind of watching everything, which is really fascinating. And so they did predict the earthquakes in California in the first week of July 4th and 5th.
I wonder how they predict it, though.
Well, like I said, it has to do with the electromagnetic energy released by the planets and how they move around each other. His theory is that the electromagnetic currents moving between the planets is what causes the plates to shift because it shifts the mass in the Earth. So, and that seems to have been fairly consistent. Other evidence, according to science, which is more of a commonly accepted system, that is what the early warning system in California is based off of, is the shifting tides causes the weight to shift on the continental shelf. And that's what causes the tectonic plates to shift, which causes seismic activity to occur.
Okay.
Now, the tides are affected by the sun and the moon, so earthquakes are more common on the new and full moons to begin with. So that is an actual science thing.
Cool.
At least in California. And then if you look at the astrology of eclipses are just huge astrological events. And so in ancient times, it was always thought that like a plague or a flood or a storm or some catastrophe would happen around the eclipses. And so earthquakes are kind of part and parcel of that. And since eclipses always happen on either a new moon or a full moon, there is some truth to that.
Do you think that the Mercury retrograde has something to do with it since it's in Cancer?
I blame Mercury retrograde for everything. And that's only partially tongue-in-cheek. I actually do think there's some credence to it. But according to the astrologers online that I follow, they were talking about how Saturn is also either square or conjunct Pluto at the same time, which messes with stuff in your house, like your homestead and stability. So that exacerbates the eclipses that we're having. In other words, of course, they're fucking with our homes.
Well, that's why I asked, because Cancer is the same thing. Cancer is about your home or your homebound or Mother Earth. Do you know your mother?
Exactly. Cancer is very into like your nesting and your womb space and like all that kind of stuff. And our homes are like our nests and our wombs. And so, yeah, I definitely think like the Mercury retrograde along with the eclipses and where they're happening, I think that all factors into it. Up until the last couple years, I did not put a lot of stock into astrology because I could not understand it and I couldn't follow it. And it didn't really make a whole lot of sense from what I did understand. But the last couple years, I've seen some things where I was like, oh, crap. I guess it sort of makes sense. There's something to this shit after all. And you could call it confirmation bias, or you can call it begrudging acceptance, which is what I call it. But I really do think there's something to that.
Personally, I mean, there's definitely credence to it. I've had some Mercury retrogrades which were like hell. So, in that sense, I do think that the Mercury retrograde could definitely have effect on seismic activity.
I think it has to do with what planet the retrograde is in, or what sign it's in, not what planet, what sign it's in. Because, like, certain ones affect me more than others, and I could see how certain ones would affect the Earth. Like, when we were in Mercury retrograde in Pisces, do you remember how much it rained?
Yes.
Yeah.
It was
and I was
weird.
like, well, yeah. We're in Pisces. Pisces is very watery, so of course we're going to have a bunch of rain. And there was all kinds of flooding happening. And then this one is in Cancer, and then now we have earthquakes. And I'm like, well, yeah, that makes sense, because the Earth is our home and family. And I think it has to do with that. And then, Cancer also has to do with the moon. So it's got a very, moon thing happening. So you were connecting the astronomy. Whenever I say astronomy, I think of pastrami.
I will never be able to hear that without thinking pastrami now.
I know, right?
And I'm suddenly hungry again.
the astronomy with the pull of the moon plus being in Cancer, and then you said Saturn, and Saturn actually has to do with home too. Has to do with, uprooting what needs to be said or what needs to come out, and
Pluto is a destructive force in general.
Right, volcanoes and earthquakes is Pluto. So,
yeah. A friend of mine, we trade astrology, we trade readings every month. She explains to me that Pluto is just kind of like a destructive force that likes to go around blowing up whatever planet it's interacting with or whatever house it's in. So when Pluto gets involved, things get blown up. That's she says it's kind of pretty straightforward.
But people definitely are going into the end of days.
They are. We have the two eclipses. We have a solar eclipse and a lunar eclipse. They're not normally co-occurring this close to each other. And the last time we had a total solar eclipse was like in the 90s. That was visible from land. And so, yeah, and it's only been a couple of years since we had a total lunar eclipse as well. So they're not like as common as you would think they were. We have partial ones like all the time. But the totality is pretty rare. And it wasn't visible here in the Americas. It was visible, I think, in Africa and from like a small part of South America, but not in the North America part of things. We didn't get to see it, obviously. And it is all about us. So, yeah, so it's pretty spectacular that these things happen. And I think it's really fascinating how quickly they co-occur. And we do have earthquake. Like, if you look up the USGS site in California, United States Government Services, but they're in charge of oil and mines and earthquakes. If you look up their website, you'll see that we have like earthquakes technically like every 2 minutes or something here in California. And California is part of the famous Ring of Fire.
What's the Ring of Fire?
Oh, the Ring of Fire is, for those of you not familiar with it, is this horseshoe-shaped, it's a set of 3 plates around the Pacific Ocean that create this horseshoe shape where all the volcanoes and seismic activity tends to center around. So all the epicenters of those.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And it actually creates a ring that is actually more like a horseshoe. So it goes all the way up the coast where like Japan is and those East Asian islands and stuff are. And then it kind of goes all the way up through that coastline and then down through Alaska and California and out to Hawaii. So it creates this ring around the Pacific coast, and it's called the Ring of Fire. So the activity around that Ring of Fire is, every minute or so there's something happening.
Okay.
Yeah, so that is one advantage, I guess, Maria, of being on the other coast.
I don't have to worry about earthquakes?
Yeah. Well, the entire
my
Ring
house
of Fire.
falling apart?
Well, only being blown away.
Right, I was going to say, it might get blown away or tsunami'd.
Yeah.
Right. Blown away or washed away, one of those. But it won't simply fall down.
We have, actually, here in Florida, we have sinkholes. We're synonymous for that and hurricanes. And
nice.
Somewhat tornadoes. A little tornadoes, but not that many.
Yeah, well, you're a bit too wet for tornadoes.
Yeah.
Where the hurricanes come in. I think hurricanes are terrifying myself, but...
They're not that terrifying. If you have a nice place to, hunker down... The worst part about a hurricane is having to wait for it to pass.
That is the part that I have a problem with. I would rather not know, and, usually earthquakes are over in, 2 or 3 seconds. And then you're like, I seem to have survived. This is fine.
With hurricanes, you're, there for, I don't know how many hours. If it's a slow hurricane, you're going to be there for a while.
The forecast where they're like, okay, next week it looks like we're going to have a hurricane. And then you're like, I have to deal with this for a week.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, so all the anticipation to me just sounds terrible.
Once you have your first hurricane and you actually go through it, you just become such a trooper. You're just like, whatever. I've actually fell asleep during a whole hurricane and I just slept through it.
Yeah, that's how we are in California. We're once you have your first one, you're just like...
Yeah, it's whatever.
Yeah, people are like, get duck and cover under your desk. And you're like, actually, by the time you think, oh, this is an earthquake, I should get under my desk, it's over.
Yeah, and I just love it how when I have a hurricane, you guys are like, are you okay? And I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. It's just a hurricane. We're good. And then, like, when you guys told me about the earthquake, I was like, oh my God, are you alive? Are you alive? So there's like a complete, like, reversal on that.
I find that equally ironic, but also, like, thank goodness for modern technology, because if we were all still living in huts, this would be very different.
Yeah, most definitely.
Well, we'd have to spend, like, the next 3 days rebuilding them.
Let's all be a community and rebuild.
Right. For us, on the earthquake side of things, we would be like, damn it, I have to pick them up and put them back in place. And you would be like, damn it, I have to find more because it blew away.
Right.
So I'm still going to go with earthquakes.
I hate earthquakes.
You hate them? Is that what you said, Heather?
I have a super issue with them. Yeah, like, I have such a hard time with them. I just don't like the earth moving. It's a creepy, weird thing.
It is a creepy, weird thing.
Pretty sure that I would freak out. Like, if I was in an earthquake, like my first one, I would be like, oh my God! I'd just be losing my shit. And you guys would probably be like, what? Like, just pass the peas, Maria. Just pass the peas. Just get over it. Should we get under the table? Like, no, are you kidding? You'll be the only one under it. Just eat. Just eat. Don't worry. Some of the lamps will fall. Don't worry about it. It's okay. It's okay.
No, we'd all be like, it already stopped, Maria. Get out from under there. While you were discussing the peas, like, it stopped. Come on. No, that's literally like how the conversation went the last one. Like, my honey was like, earthquake. And I was like, oh yeah, it is. Huh. Oh, it's still going. Do you think we should do something?
Are you really that chill about it?
Yeah, I totally am.
Well, you slept through one, didn't you?
I did. I slept through one of them.
See, I didn't feel any of them, but we have had a few threes here, like small ones.
Mm-hmm.
And even just a little bit of I'm all, oh, earthquake, what do we do? And then it's usually done. And everyone else is like, what earthquake? And I look it up and it's happening. Like, I'm so connected to the earth. Like, I just know, like, if it's near me. But these last two I did not feel at all because they weren't near me. And I was thankful for that because I would have had a panic attack.
Yeah, well, in all fairness, we are really lucky because, like, the epicenter is, like, 5 hours away from me. So being at the epicenter is a very different experience. Mm-hmm. But we were lucky there were no fatalities in this one, which is, like, high fives all around.
Which I found kind of weird. I mean, grateful, but weird.
No, it's epic. It's awesome.
Yeah.
It's very strange. At least one person dies.
Yeah, especially with a 7.1.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I was like, it's a 7.1. You would expect something.
I think because where it was kind of out in the middle of nowhere, there's not a lot of stuff out there.
Yeah, the towns there are really small.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
And also it was a really shallow one, so it was very much rolling instead of like a vicious shaking. So it was kind of just like gentle.
Mm-hmm. It's not like your mom waking you the fuck up to go to class after the 4th time that she's told you to wake up.
It's not like your mom, no.
Yeah, not like my mom.
The 4th time my mom gave up and called in for me. But yeah, no, it was just kind of like I don't know, it was more like being on a boat than like what you see in movies and stuff. So
yeah, it's very dramatic in movies. But I saw like videos of people on Instagram that were videotaping while the earthquake was going, and I was like, oh, it's not that bad.
It's really not.
One guy was like, hey, Barbara, I think we haven't heard. There's definitely an earthquake happening. Definitely. Like, I see the lampshade. It's moving. And I'm there like, oh, okay. It wasn't, okay. I thought it was going to be something worse.
Yeah, there's a very accurate depiction of an earthquake where you're like, oh, the stuff on the walls is moving. This is for real an earthquake. Because if you are like walking or something, if you're moving around or if you're sitting on something really plush and cushy, you won't even notice. Well, because you're already like moving, or like if you're sitting on something that's just gonna like absorb the vibrations anyway. Then
right. Absorb the shock or what have you, the vibration.
Yeah, if you're driving, you're not gonna feel it.
I've like felt an earthquake and thought that like my cat was scratching their ear on my bed.
Oh wow.
Yeah, because it's just like you're just like okay. Or, like, I assumed my honey was rolling over in bed before. And then I was like, oh, he's not in here. I guess that was an earthquake.
The Northbridge earthquake, I remember that. Like, I'm old enough to remember it. And
me too.
Yeah, I was in my 20s when it happened, I think. It's like 97 or something?
Yeah.
Yeah. And it happened like 3 in the morning. So I just remember being jerked awake because that one was like that vicious jerking where you couldn't stand up. It was like things were falling over. And, I was in Ventura, and it was in Northbridge, which is like an hour and a half away. But
what? I was in Ventura too.
Yeah, like our China hutch fell over.
We didn't have anything fall over or anything, but we I was talking to my honey and I was like, "Why? I guess when you like are born and raised in California, you just have a way of arranging your furniture and stuff. Like stuff doesn't fall over."
No, it did for me, and I scared the crap out of me because I literally woke up I had just gone to bed at like 2 a.m, and I was like, "What the hell is going on? I didn't drink that much," and then I realized that China was falling over, and I was like, "Yeah, that's bad."
We were all in bed, and I think I had just gone to sleep, or I was just laying down to go to sleep. But it lasted long enough for everyone to be like, "Oh, I guess we should get up." For the Northridge quake, that was not, because it was a violent shaking and it lasted a really long time.
Like, how long did it last?
Oh, a couple minutes, I think.
At least a minute. Usually they're about 30 seconds, but this was really long. Like, it just kept going. It was long enough that people were calling and going, "We're still in an earthquake." I'm like, "Why are you calling me?"
Right? Like, aren't you supposed to be like staying off the line and standing in a doorway or something? Yeah, so we had all like just gotten into a doorway, and then we were like standing there talking about it, like it's still going, because like it was a small apartment, so like all the doorways to the bedrooms were like facing each other, and so we're all just like standing there in our bedroom doors, like holding onto the door frame, like it's still going. Should we do something? I think we're doing what we're supposed to be doing. We'll just like stay where we are.
Yeah, but for some reason, this one in particular, I think because we had 2 in a row, like 2 major ones in a row, it really, really got people into the whole end of days thing. My mom even messaged me and asked me what was going on and if there was anything else. And then she went this whole thing about Edgar Cayce and Nostrodamus and how the end of days is coming and that I live near a beach, so I'd better be careful.
Yeah, you better be careful somehow. I don't know what that means.
Well, it means that the ocean is going to rise, and my house is going to be beachfront property because I live, a block and a half.
Is beachfront property.
Well, I mean, like
you go across the street and you're in the water.
I know.
That is literally beachfront property.
Right, but it could be more beachfront property.
Yeah.
Like beach.
You mean it could be in the water?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's more than the definition of beachfront property.
Right.
That's in beach property.
In beach property, yes.
I think that's underwater cities.
The New Atlantis.
Yeah. Neo Atlantis.
New Atlantis.
Or new, like NU.
Yeah. New, and I like that. New Atlantis. It sounds very futuristic and new agey. But yeah, so there was like this whole thing about how like we're going to have another one. Like everybody's kind of, not really on pins and needles now, but for days they were expecting another one. Watch, it'll probably happen while we're doing this podcast. By my luck. So if this podcast cuts off, that's because we're all dead because we have an earthquake. It'll just be Maria. Oh, hello.
Hello.
Awful. There wouldn't be anything because I'm not the one that's recording. You two are.
Yes, it's Skype recording. That's online. It's in the cloud, girl.
Oh, okay.
Right. And then there'll be a movie about it, the Found Footage Podcast.
Oh, God.
Earthquake 911.
Yeah, it'd
Only
be great.
on Sci-Fi.
Only on Sci-Fi.
Well, I saw a footage of, I guess, the LA News was on the air at the time. And so I saw a little video clip of, like, the newscasters, like, sitting at their news counter. And then they're all like, earthquake, earthquake. And they jump under their news counters.
The one that I saw was this one chick that she went under the table. And he was, like, frozen stiff. Like, he could not move. Like, he looked like he was terrified.
Oh, poor baby.
Yeah.
I mean, that very sympathetically. That is not sarcasm.
I didn't think. I don't know about people who are listening, but I didn't think it was sarcastic.
Oh, I thought it was sarcastic. But no, that's so sad, though. Like, I feel bad for him.
Yeah.
I wonder if that was his first one.
Maybe. But I just remember that the lady was saying, like, hey, guys, it looks like it's getting a little bit more rough. We're going to go under our tables. Talk to you guys later, kind of a thing. Like, and I'm like, lady, just get under the table. Don't worry about it. I think people will understand. I don't even think people are watching. They're too worried getting under the table, okay?
Well, like, those news broadcast all up California, so, you can't necessarily feel it everywhere.
True.
So you do have
but I think people could understand, though. I mean, be like, I'm sorry, but you did not finish that correctly. Don't get under the table until you're done with your broadcast.
Yeah, most people understand, like, earthquake, and then you dive under a desk. But yeah, so it's really interesting how that happens. And then I think with you're speaking about the end of days, awkward segue. Everything going on in the world with climate change, the political atmosphere, the eclipses happening because the earthquake happened right in between the two eclipses. It's a lot to worry about, and we've seen a lot of other signs from like Revelations and Ragnarok and those kinds of things. So people really are worried about the end of days. We've had a lot of people say things like, we have passed the 350 parts per million, where we start doing irreparable damage to the planet. In regards to climate change, people are saying that it will become uninhabitable in the next 10 years. There's all sorts of conflicts happening all over the world that are leading to a lot more violent conflicts and civil wars in various countries, including the more, advanced societies, Britain and Europe and America and Canada, even Canada, even New Zealand. What the fuck? Those peace-loving hippies out there. So I think people are really feeling this whole end of days thing.
I think the stuff that's happening right now with like the chaos aspect of it, I think that's normal. We were coming into like a new energy, a new age, apparently. That's what everybody keeps telling me. And we always have years of social injustice. We always have years of chaos. I mean, the whole 60s were about that. There's a whole generation of people that, had to deal with that. And there was all this stuff with riots and remember, there was all kinds of stuff.
And there was Vietnam.
Yeah. I mean, I think we go through this periodically, and it's about that time. So the 60s were 40, 50 years ago? I can't do math, apparently, but it's about that time. So I don't see that as being anything different. I think we're just kind of in that age.
Cleaning out the system?
Yeah, because the baby boomers are just like old and still trying to like do things in that old way. Mm-hmm. And the Gen Xers are just like, I'm out of here. I've had enough. And the millennials want to do something different. Mm-hmm. So, of course, there's going to be some calamity with that. We have all these different opposing forces right now. And I am not surprised one bit. I kind of expected it. Actually, I was thinking that the 90s were a little bit too chill. From my
so you're thinking that, like, this is just growing pains?
Growing pains, yeah.
We do this every generation or so.
Mm-hmm. We do it every few generations.
I feel like it's a good sign myself. Like,
I do too.
I agree.
I think the Gen Xers were kind of that in between, where our parents did a lot of fighting. The hippies and like the 60s, they were all kind of in the tail end of that. Mm-hmm. And then we were kind of the jaded generations because our parents were done fighting, so we didn't really have any kind of like fight. They were trying to make it better for us. But then they sort of abandoned us a little bit too. We're kind of the generation that, we're the latchkey kind of kid generation. And we, I don't know who I was talking about this, but, it was you. About, you said it yesterday, about how, like, we changed the way we do things. You no longer have to go to college to make a lot of money. We changed the dynamic of how you make money. Mm-hmm. Because we don't need to go to college anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
And then the millennials have taken that new kind of thinking and then made it their own. But then we have these baby boomers who are still like, nope, that's not the way it happens. You're supposed to be 25 and married and buy a house, and you need to go to college to do that. And everyone else is like, yeah, that hasn't worked in like 40 years, so I don't know what you're talking about. You know what I mean? Yes. So, of course, there's going to be these opposing forces, and it happens in nature, too. Mm-hmm. It has to.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, because right now we're having this gigantic shift change in how society is being run, especially here in the United States, because of, like our political and our religious beliefs, because now, like the more new age religions and all that stuff are gaining popularity than the old stuff. And then it's the same thing with the politics. It's like, people who think in those baby boomer type mentalities are being overshadowed by the new generation.
So, no disrespect to baby boomers. We're just
no disrespect to baby boomer. My mom's a baby. I think my mom's a baby boomer. Is she a baby boomer? I have no freaking clue.
Probably.
Yeah, your mom is a baby boomer. Yeah.
If she's still alive, odds are good.
But I think also I mean, to further that, what we do in America actually filters out into other countries, especially like Europe.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, it's not like England isn't dealing with a whole, well, Europe isn't dealing with a whole, like, Brexit situation.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Because that's a whole special kettle of fish there.
Mm-hmm.
I can't even wrap my brain around Brexit and what's going on there.
Neither.
It's ugly.
I don't see this as an end of days thing. I see it as change, but I mean, we're like looking into the Edgar Cayce's stuff and Nostrodamus, and he did have some predictions that look similarly like what's going on now, so I can't like say no, but I can say with confidence probably not, because they're supposed to be, according to Cayce and a couple other people and Nostradamus and one other person, Malachi or something like that, they're supposed to be the 3 antichrists, and only 2 of them have showed up.
One being Hitler, I think that's what they said.
Yeah, Napoleon and Hitler were the 2, and then there's Nostradamus said there was going to be 3, and then Edgar Cayce said that the 3rd Antichrist, it says the fruits of the Spirit of the Christ are love, joy, spirit, obedience, long-suffering, brotherly love, kindness. Against such there is no law. The spirit of hate, the Antichrist, is contention, strife, fault-finding, lovers of self, lovers of praise. Those are the Antichrist, and take possessions of groups, masses, and show themselves even in the life of men. So he's saying that there can be more than one Antichrist.
It almost sounded like the Antichrist wouldn't be embodied so much as a spirit.
Like a narcissist.
Yeah.
Narcissistic spirit.
Or like a state of mind.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then
the real Antichrist was the Antichrist that was with us all along.
Right.
Or in us the whole time, right?
Basically anybody who's not Christian. No. I think it's
anyone who's not obedient.
Right.
I did see that in the list. Don't think I didn't notice it.
Nostradamus thought... Did you know that Nostradamus scried? That's how he got his information?
Mm-hmm.
I did not know that.
I didn't either. I thought he was a trance channel.
Nope. He scried with a flame and a black mirror or a water bowl.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, check that out.
Yeah.
That is cool. I've got my water black mirror.
He used to do it, and he used to write it in he used to do his writings in like poetry or in some sort of
couplets.
Yeah,
quatrains actually.
Oh, yeah,
quatrains. Yeah, it wouldn't look like if he was actually doing predictions. It would just like look like he was just writing like weird poetry or something.
Right, and quatrains are 4-lined poems that rhyme.
Yeah,
just for people who are not poetry nerds.
Mm-hmm. But he said that. Well, he didn't name Napoleon and Hitler, but I guess he had descriptions that represented them and what they did.
Mm-hmm. And he saw 3, though, right?
He saw 3. The third one was called Mavis Allus. MA-B-US-ALL-US. So it could be maybe us, all us.
Oh.
Makes sense.
So the Antichrist who was with us all along.
We are Legion. Sorry, what?
Yes.
Yeah, pretty much.
Wow.
So that's why people think it's kind of the end of days now, because it's not the 3rd Antichrist is not a person. It's a movement or a time of change.
Like the We Witches 3 podcast? Well, on Podcoin, you can get paid just to listen to our podcast. And not just our podcast, but any podcast. You can get the app on Android and iPhone. It's free and easy to use. You can earn Amazon gift cards, Starbucks gift cards. I mean, the sky's the limit here. But most of all, you can give to charity, which is something that me and the girls really love. I use the Podcoin app to do all my podcast listening, and I love it. Get it at your app store today. Just remember, when you sign up, use the code WITCHES and get 300 Podcoin credits. Just to start off with. And I don't know about you, but I'm getting my Amazon gift card. Do you get obsessed about the faces on Mars? Are you a fan of the X-Files, Fringe, or Slenderman? Listen to the Envious Aliens podcast with your host, Heather Woodworth. On this show, she gives you a deep dive into topics that don't usually get covered or see the light of day. The spooky, the weird, the macabre, the paranormal, and of course, aliens. Envious Aliens Podcast. Find us at podcast.enviousaliens.com. That's podcast, podcast.nvusaliens.com. See you there, and don't forget to bring your tinfoil hat. podcast.nvusaliens.com.
You know, and I'm not opposed to it being the end of days. Like, you know, we're all three of us are tarot readers, so you know, we're used to like death is not the end; it's just a beginning. So in that sense, like we do like to think of like the end of it. Like, yeah, sure, it could be the end of days, like these ones. You know, not necessarily the end of all days. It's just the end of like this particular chapter or this.
Yeah, this era and whatnot.
Yeah, exactly. Like the end of this era. So perhaps it's the end of these days, and we're going to start some new days after them.
Edgar Cayce did say that there in some other places, and it's really hard to find. You have a lot of people talking about Edgar Cayce, but it's really hard to find Edgar Cayce's actual words, which is really strange to me. It's unless you pick up his books and just actually read them. Yes. Not a lot of people actually quote him. They just say, "Yeah, take it from me. This is what he said."
It's a game of telephone with Edgar Cayce stuff. Like, I heard he said this. Well, I was told from so-and-so that he said this. Like, on down the line till it says that, like, we're all riding purple elephants in the year 83.
Yeah, that thing I said about in the spirit of the opposed, the fruits of the spirit, he actually wrote that. That's actually his words. But other than that, it was really hard to find stuff. Like, the only other thing I could find is watch for strife in the Indian Ocean. You say that these are the sea, yes, for all. For there shall be a breaking be. And that's supposed to be the earthquake in the Indian Ocean in 2004. And I was like, oh, okay, sure. But then this one about the third Antichrist, that's just a nice paragraph. And then he says later on that the Great Pyramid has, like, say there's the Mayan calendar, right? But then the pyramid, he said the Great Pyramids are a calendar in itself, and that the top of the calendar is 2038, so that's the end of days, not 2012.
So by Great Pyramid, is he referring to the Egyptian one?
Yes.
Okay.
And allegedly, between 2038 and now, we're supposed to be going through the age of oneness.
I don't feel like one. Do you feel like one? I mean, I am only one, but I don't feel like one with everybody else.
But it's where Satan is bound and only souls of light will be here on Earth. And it's the emergence of light workers and the emergence of oneness. And we're getting back into being energy versus material. And so people think because he's alluding to the idea of us becoming energy versus material, that means that the Earth is no longer going to die, or the third dimension is not going to be here anymore.
Cataclysm, and we all get disembodied.
Exactly. And then supposedly in the Piscean age, we will regain full consciousness. But then he said that this might not be a good thing because look what happened to Lemuria and Mu and Atlantis.
We don't know.
Well, he says that their knowledge and their truth and their full consciousness is what created war and all these bad things, and that's why Atlantis and Mu and Lemuria were destroyed.
Well, he had it going well, like we all got to turn into beings of light, but then apparently we destroy each other. That's cool.
So either way, we're doomed. It's like either we blow up and we become energy again, and the Earth ceases to exist, or we regain full consciousness and then we kill ourselves because we're assholes.
Yeah, so no matter which way you slice it.
Yeah.
Right. But that's what they think that the third Antichrist is. Some people think, I'm not going to say everybody, but a lot of people think that the third Antichrist is actually this new age movement of going into full consciousness, which is kind of what we're going through right now with the emergence of the witch. And that is what's going to bring about full consciousness, but that's also going to bring our demise. And so that wave is the third Antichrist.
Right, but it's kind of a better demise than, like, blowing up the planet.
Right. Well, it's just interesting because Nostrodamus and Edgar Cayce were both, like, devout Christians. So this is a very Christian construct, what we're talking about here. Even the idea of the Antichrist is a Christian construct. So somewhere there's this idea of long suffering. So somewhere in there, we are our own worst enemy. So we must follow, because the only true thing in the world is God. So of course we have to come to some sort of inevitable ending.
Right. And like specifically, Casey said light workers. He didn't say witches.
Right.
So he's not talking about us.
Well, people have their own ideas about that, but he said that the time of where Satan is bound, they call it, the Satan is bound time, is actually the best time to be on Earth, because that's when we come into full consciousness and we become light workers, and that's when we start to see the end of wars and the end of all these kind of wretched things, the end of murder and stuff like that.
But also, isn't he like thrashing about and shit under the surface?
Yes.
I remember that from when I was little, believe it or not.
Funny enough, I was watching a movie. Well, I wasn't watching a movie, excuse me. I was listening to a podcast that was talking about a movie. I think it's the movie called Left Behind with Kirk Cameron.
Oh, that's a whole book series, yeah.
Well, here's the thing. I didn't see the movie, but I was listening to the podcast, and obviously they're funny guys, they're comedians, so they're making fun of it and blah, blah, blah. But one of the things that they mentioned about the movie is that when you see who the Antichrist is, he's actually trying to do good things. He's trying to stop war. He's trying to do this. Like, the whole idea is to feed people and all that stuff. And they're just like, why is this guy a bad guy? And that reminds me of that, right? When you said that, like that, when we're in that time of enlightenment and going into full consciousness, that will be, everything's going to be great. But it's a good time to be there because it's the Antichrist is there, or the devil or something.
The devil is bound.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's because once we come into full consciousness, then we no longer, this is the whole thing, and this is just somebody else that said this, and I remember this.
We don't need to worry about it?
Well, no. Once you come into full consciousness, you no longer need God.
Okay.
Oh.
Because you become all-knowing, correct? So we're a likeness of God, right? He made us in his own image. Mm-hmm. So if you come into full consciousness, there's no need for God because you have all the answers.
Because you have a part of God in you, or you...
Right.
You
God becomes obsolete, and once God becomes obsolete, then that means the devil has taken over.
That makes no sense.
It does, because, like, what did the devil do to cause the fall of man in the first place?
Oh, yeah.
He gave us knowledge.
Right, give us knowledge.
Exactly.
So if we have all the knowledge, that would be the ultimate fall.
Right. And then with that knowledge, because we don't no longer have God anymore to instruct us or help us, then we fall, because then we use that knowledge to make our own decisions, and then we start warring with each other, and we start becoming of the flesh. And once we become of the flesh, then the devil has won, or Satan has won.
Fully conscious, we wouldn't need the flesh, I would say. I don't know. Like, my idea of, like, becoming fully conscious is, like, being a higher being, like, being enlightened.
Right, so, like nirvana or something or something.
So those things that are, like, based off of your ego are no longer that important to you. So why would you war? Why would you fight? Why would you argue if your ego wasn't in charge as it is now in the physical realm?
Because it's the folly of man. That's the same reason why it's the folly of man. Because
also, we're looking at the Christian dichotomy here specifically, so there's no, like, ascending out of your bodiness. Gotcha. You're just going to stay in there.
Mm-hmm. So do you know why the number one reason we don't have full disclosure about UFOs?
No, but I want to know.
It ties into this.
Yeah.
Oh, because it makes that God doesn't exist, because if God existed, why are there aliens?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because there's lots of people in higher up places that are devout Christian, and they believe that UFOs are of Satan. They're actually demons or devils, and they're here to give us the knowledge. They're here to awaken us so that we no longer need God.
Yeah, I have opinions, but
we've heard that's a true thing. Like, I believe spoken with a couple people that are higher up that were like Nick Pope said something like that, because he was in the Ministry of Defense in England, and there's a few other people that were at AlienCon, and they were talking about this, how, like, if you even bring this stuff up, people freak out because of their Christian beliefs, and that's a lot of the reason why nothing gets out of of the government. It's because people are too afraid that if these things come to light, that God is no longer going to be able to exist because people are going to stop believing and the demons will take over the earth.
Exactly. Well, that's the same reason why we have like this huge debate about abortion, because people refuse to recognize that it's a religious debate, and like we don't legislate religion.
Yeah, like my opinion, I don't like abortion. I wouldn't want to get an abortion, but if I had to, I want to have that right.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
It's just fascinating to me that people think that the end of days is happening because of earthquakes, but then if you really go back into the text and you really look at like Edgar Cayce or Nostradamus or Malachi or some of these other people that were actually doing the predictions, their belief system, which is mostly Christian, really dictates how they perceive things and how they put it down on paper.
It really, really does. And like learning to perceive those kind of prophecies, I guess, in the Christian context that they were given, like really is informative.
From my experience with Christians, I've always learned that any time that you can step away from God, it's always seen negative. Even in the slightest bit, it's always seen as negative. Just because it's very much like, you must be part of us. You must be one of us, kind of a thing. And that's why I don't agree with it. I mean, I see it in the Christian aspect, like, oh, okay, that makes sense. But I don't agree with it. You know what I mean? Like, I think it's, it doesn't make any sense to me. In the sense, like, if you become enlightened, why would you need your ego? Like, why would your ego play a part of your decisions after you become enlightened? It should not at all. It should be, like, nullified completely out of your system.
Right, because if you're enlightened, then there's no need for the ego.
Exactly.
Because you know all the things, and the ego's about questions.
Exactly. So, at that point, there's no ego, so there's no conflict.
I find it fascinating. Like, so we talked to Greg Postman, right? And he does channeling from higher beings. And his message is so different about how the future is going to be. He has this very chill, like, yeah, there's going to be some strife, but hey, it's cool, we're good. He truly believes that we're all going to ascend and we're going to become full consciousness, and that's going to be an awesome, cool thing. And this is coming down from the same information.
Yeah, so it's very, like, informed by your own personal beliefs.
Yeah, I think so.
You know, although, like, I don't know, like, it's really interesting because my understanding of the way, like, Cayce did it is that he would go into a full trance, and then he would, like, speak from his bed, because he was known as, like, the sleeping prophet.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And at first he had someone writing down what he said, like taking dictation, and then later, when technology advanced, he had a tape recording machine. Not to be confused with a more modern tape recorder. Okay, this is like reel-to-reel stuff. And then he would record himself speaking, and then take notes from that later. It just feels it's hard for me to conceive, like, how that actually happened based on, like, the way it was translated into his writing, because it is very, like, sentence fragments. And then, like, sometimes it turns into, like, weird oral poetry. Whereas, like, something more modern channelings that I've listened to, like Gregory Postman, that we did the podcast with, it doesn't seem like that fragmented.
What if he was just, like, talking in his sleep? And he just made some really good guesses? Because I have an uncle that used to do that all the time. But, you know, none of his predictions came true.
I don't know, like, unless he could nap all that often, like, all the time, because he would do it, like, on command, like, I'm going to go do some channeling right now.
That would be convenient. I would like that. That would be fun.
Right? I'm so down for that right now.
I'd be like, okay, give me a second. You will marry a man. He will have blonde hair, and he will be named Jeff.
Oh, that was refreshing. Wow.
That was refreshing. Oh, little cat nap.
I mean, that's how I like to get my precognitive things. Like, I always do it through dreams. So I'm just like, please don't bother me, otherwise I have shit to do. Right? Wouldn't you hate to be, like, driving down the road to the grocery store and suddenly you've got a vision? Like, that could be dangerous.
Yes.
So please, just leave it in the dreams.
That would be dangerous. Well, it depends. I mean, if it's something like in the movies, it's like you can't even drive. Yeah, that would be dangerous. But, I mean, I've had, like, little, like, sparks of seeing things when I've been driving, and I've been fine. But then again, it wasn't like, hey, Maria, let me slap you in the face with this. It's more like,
hey, just letting you know, just this little tidbit of information. Yeah, for me, it's always been like long, drawn out, like I'll get days worth of visions where I'm like, oh wow. Really? Now no surprises for the next 3 days.
When I'm asleep, I get the long stories.
I can't conceive of what it would be like for Edgar Cayce to do that. And then to have like, to either be sitting there transcribing what he's saying, you know, and I know he was really strict with the people who did that. The people who took dictation for him, like they had to write down exactly what he said. They couldn't improvise. And then when he went over the recordings later, when he switched to that technology, I know he was pretty faithful about it. I don't know. The stuff he personally wrote was really kind of fragmented sometimes. So it's kind of confusing to know what was going on there.
People study it and they swear by it. I mean, there are so many books of Edgar Cayce or just on his stuff.
I know. My mom had all of them. That's why I can speak to that.
I know, right?
Yeah. She had like 20 some odd books that were by Edgar Cayce.
Who are we talking to about this too? Like the idea of twin flames was changed by Edgar Cayce.
Right.
And the
Wait, what? Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. This is news.
Yeah,
well, sort of yes and sort of no. Like not into the modern concept we have today, but he had a hand in evolving it from Plato.
Wow, I didn't know twin flames went that far back.
Yeah, I've been researching it for a while.
Okay, yeah, because he changed it, and like the Theosophists changed it. The Theosophists changed a lot of stuff.
They really did. They started the whole Ascended Master stuff.
Yeah, they also started the whole idea of thought forms. Did you know that they changed the Tibetan Book of the Dead?
Yes. That's Helena Blavatsky, right? I probably just butchered her name.
But there is the Theosophists went in and changed a lot of stuff, and then Edgar Cayce like moved it forward even more.
Yeah. So, and that was something I was going to mention too. We've had such an evolution of these techniques since Edgar Cayce. Like we've grown up with channeling, and that is not something he had the benefit of. So it wouldn't be like. He absolutely was a master for his time, but like now he'd kind of be a noob.
He would. Yeah, that's funny that you say that because, you know, the 70s were a great time for trance channeling.
They were, but they were still really, really new. Like our techniques now are so advanced compared to that.
Right. But what I meant by that, I'm sorry, I didn't really explain it, was that we grew up with that. Our parents grew up with it. We know what it is. It's very old hat. This idea of channeling. To us, it is.
Yeah, exactly. Like the work that people have done on the techniques and the systems and the knowledge around it has been pretty radical.
When I was looking this stuff up for the End of Days, I was very confused at how credible he seems, even though his techniques and his verbiage and just him in general. I was like, how do you take this so seriously? Even Nostrodamus, like, I've read Nostradamus' stuff, and I'm all like, I've read the stuff where it says, like, the Hitler stuff, especially, and I'm like, I don't know if I see Hitler in this. It's very subjective, and it's up to opinion, and people look at every single word, and they just know, and I'm like, okay, but, like...
Right, I need, like, hard facts and figures. Like, he needs to give me some numbers that I can literally match.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Or I need a Hitler. I need the word Hitler somewhere. Or
isn't it
mustache?
Isn't it in his trike? The one when he talks about the one that's supposedly Hitler.
No.
He says Hitler or says something similar to like Hitler's name, to like Adolf or Hitler or something. But he says like he words it weird.
There's like a weird illusion, and like one of the names of Hitler's generals can be translated is like the German word for a word he used. It's like, so you have to take like a couple, there's like 6 degrees of separation to Hitler going on, you know? So like he uses the Latin word, and then if you translate into the German, it's the German word for one of his lieutenants. You like that kind of separation, but no, like Adolf and Hitler are not in his specific words.
Oh, I could have sworn that it was, or something similar, like not the actual word, but like similar, that if you were to read it, you'd be like, is that Hitler? No, that's not Hitler. That's, you know, that's with 2 H's or, you know, with an I instead of a G or something. You know what I mean? Like, but it's like one or two letters of a difference. But if you read it, it sounds like it would be. Like it's the difference between saying Nicholas and Nikki.
Right. I would have to go back and read it because I haven't specifically read Nostradamus since I was a young teen. Yeah. But I remember reading the Hitler stuff and being like, it's believable, but I never would have gotten Hitler.
And a lot of Nostradamus's predictions are only like proven after the fact.
Way
like,
after the fact, yeah.
Yeah. Like the
like,
September 11th. Like the September 11th bombing, and they were like, "Oh yeah, and then he said, "Oh my god, yeah, it is." Oh, and people were like seeing the connection, and I was like, "Yeah, like afterwards."
I don't think that's the nature of the beast, frankly, because I mean, he was really, really, yeah, that's the 1500s. So his understanding of situations, you're just like, if a dude was describing stuff to you of modern day and he was in the 1500s, like, you're going to be like, what are you talking about? Oh, a fork. You're talking about a fork.
Yeah.
I get you. You know, he's not going to have the words and the vocabulary that we use today.
It's not going to be like airplane. He's going to see like giant metal eagle in the sky. And I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. I think that's what he says. Giant metal eagle in the sky.
Here's the quatrain for Hitler.
Oh, awesome.
Beasts ferocious with hunger will cross the rivers. The great part of the battlefield will be against Hister.
Oh, that's the one.
Into a cage of iron will be the great one will be drawn when the children of Germany observes nothing.
That's what it was. All. It was Hister instead of Hitler. Hister. Because I remember that I was like, okay.
Yeah, see, and I wouldn't have gotten there because I just see that as like a abbreviation for history.
Yeah.
It makes sense in that sentence.
Let me see. It says, this is from How Stuff Works, just in case you're wondering. It says, Nostradamus followers claim that the name Hister is a direct reference to Hitler. Another quatrain refers to a ruthless leader born in Western Europe to poor parents. And yet another refers to Hister's conflict with Asia and Africa. Skeptics ascribe the apparent accuracy of these quatrains to two major factors: problems with translation and simple coincidence. So I would not have gotten Hitler from Beast Ferocious with Hunger Will Cross the Rivers. That to me sounds D&D, so I don't know.
In all fairness, D&D is like, supposed to be like real life. So
there you go.
D&D is supposed to sound like that, yeah. and yeah, there are translation issues too, because he's a French guy, right?
I don't remember.
I don't remember. Maybe, but I'm not sure.
Gotta find that out, I guess.
Well, he's a French astrologer, so
yeah. I would say you have a better
Nicole
knowledge.
de Nostrodamus, usually Latinized as Nostradamus, is a French astrologer, physician, and reputed seer. Best known for his book Les Prophéties.
Here's his quatrain for 9/11. See if you get 9/11 out of this. In the city of God, there will be great thunder. Two brothers torn apart by chaos. While the fortress endures, the great leader will succumb. The third big war will begin when this big city is burning.
No, it still sounds like it's in the future.
But the city of God, like, when did...
I would assume
New York is not city of God. Definitely
Rome.
Not. I would say Rome, yeah.
That's what I was thinking, the Vatican, right?
Yeah.
I would not call New York a godly city.
Oh, no, not at all.
This kind of sounds like William Shakespeare. This kind of sounds like Romeo and Juliet.
Well, yeah, because Shakespeare wrote quatrains as well.
Right. So it just... I would not get 9/11 out of that. So again, and so this one is... In the year of the new century and 9 months, from the sky will come a great king of terror. The sky will burn at 45 degrees. Fire approaches this great new city.
That I could see more getting, because new city, like New York.
Mm-hmm.
I wish I read French, though, because I'd like to see it in its original language. I hate when things translated, because things get so lost.
Yeah, but even if you knew French, you'd have to learn like Old French. Because even when I read Sense and Sensibility, I'm like, I gotta get my dictionary out, don't I?
See, I
don't have
cut
that problem,
my
I
teeth
know.
on medieval literature, so
You don't have that issue. I know.
I don't have issue with like, oh, what the hell, the Canterbury Tales and that dude. Like, I had no problem reading that. So
Oh, I love the Canterbury.
right, I have no problem reading like old medieval literature that didn't even have spelling established yet.
Mm.
So some people think that the third Antichrist, because remember it was called Mavis,
Right.
who will supposedly start a world war. It can be rearranged to be Usam B, and they think that's Osama bin Laden. And so they think that the 9/11 was, and the Osama bin Laden was the third.
Yeah, but Usam Bin isn't Osama bin Laden.
No. It's just, there's some theory that was the start of the new Antichrist, which is funny to me because, like, why do these things always have to happen in the United States for it to be?
Right? That's very, like, I don't know, Western-centric, but I mean, they don't always have to start. Hitler was not in the United States.
Yeah.
Neither was Napoleon.
Mm.
Yeah. I don't know much about the Napoleon one, but...
Oh, I found the French text for Nostradamus.
See, I don't know French.
I don't know French either, so that's not going to do me any good.
We'll put it in the show notes, so just
We will.
You won't get crazy.
French. I have a couple friends who speak French, so.
So do you think there's going to be another earthquake?
I think there have been, and there will be.
No, but like a
Inevitably.
big one. Like a
But, like,
7 or 8.
Yeah.
Oh, God, not for a while. Inevitably there will be another earthquake, but I don't think it's tied to the end times at all. It's been about 20 years since our last one. I think it'll be about 20 years till the next one. I don't think the Earth's tectonic plates are on that kind of schedule. I do think we have some other, like, end time-ish things to worry about, but I have never bought into the whole California's going to fall into the ocean bit. I suspect you don't either.
Me?
Yeah, considering
Oh.
where your house is.
No, my mom keeps telling me that I have to move eventually. Hi, Mom. She listens to the podcast, so she
Does
says,
she?
Yeah. I'm sure
Nice.
she does. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure if I believe in it. I believe that the poles are starting to melt, that kind of thing. Is it the South Pole? I think it is. And people are freaking out because, of the bears and stuff, but, like,
That would be
that's...
the North Pole.
North Pole, I'm sorry. See, I knew it was one of the poles. The way that I see it is like, yeah, the Earth changes, dude. That's what happens. Like, there's all kinds of animals that became extinct. There's all kinds of things that change all the time. And yeah, a lot of it's man-made, but at the same time, change is inevitable. So, I don't know.
Do you believe that if the end of times is coming, that it's going to be basically like the end, or that there's going to be like some of us that survive, like, post-apocalyptic type of thing?
There's always someone that survives. I mean, if Noah is any indication of that, then there'll always be somebody that survives. I don't, just like cockroaches, I don't think we're going to cease to exist.
Okay.
I'm okay with it if we do. Like, I'm terrible, but I have, and I think I just posted about this somewhere, like, I have this weird comfort in the idea, and this is, as technology gets further and further, this is less assured. But, like, even if we do wipe ourselves out, like, our hunk of rock that we spin around on is going to be fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It might actually heal itself from all the shit that we've done to it.
Right? It'll probably be a little better off without us.
Yeah.
But
Well, allegedly we're supposed to be going back into space in the next 10 years, and there will be Mars, so they're supposed to be putting people on Mars. So
yeah, and we can
there's
wipe out
that.
a whole nother planet. It'll be
I know,
fine.
right? Twice. Because I think that there were actually life on Mars at one time, so...
Yeah, there's supposed to be like frozen water and stuff. So.
I know. So we can do it again.
Exactly. And again, and again, and again, just like
Right.
sci-fi has taught us. I kind of feel like the end of the world is a great cop-out.
Yeah. It's too easy. I was
Like,
just going to say, it's too easy.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
that allows you to kind of be like, well, it's the end of the world. I should just get mine and don't worry about the rest.
Exactly.
But like believing in a continuation of the world kind of makes you invested in making sure not to fuck things up.
Yeah.
I mean, if you care.
I mean, look at the people that, I think it was like maybe 4 or 5 years ago, who thought that the world was ending.
In 2012?
Yeah, no, not 2012. Like,
Oh.
it was another date. they actually thought it was like maybe 2008 or something.
I was going to ask you which time, because there's been a lot.
Yeah, there's been a lot. There's been a lot.
2000?
But there was this one guy who said, like, oh, I've been studying the Bible since I was a kid, and I think the end of days is going to be on this and this date. Like rapture. He said rapture. That rapture would happen this date. And people started following him and believing him, so much so that some people sold all their property, their house, their car, everything.
Right.
And they were just like, oh, and I gave all my money to donation because I'm not going to be here. I'm going to be raptured. And rapture did not show up.
Right. That seems like it would be very awkward. Like, oh, I'm still here. I did not make plans for this.
Yeah. And that is really fucked. Like, I was really annoyed by that. But not that I wasn't annoyed that rapture didn't happen. I was annoyed that people actually believed it so much so that they actually, like, gave up their lives pretty much.
That doesn't make any sense to me, though. Like, why would you sell your property if it's rapture? Because, like, it's not going to do anybody else any good.
Well, so they can enjoy the money in their last few days.
I see. Okay.
I assume. Or they just didn't bother paying bills. Like, right? they just didn't care.
After Wednesday, we're not going to need the electricity anyway.
Exactly. And then, like, rapture doesn't happen on the date, and you're just like, oh, well, I've got over $1,000 of bills that I haven't paid with interest. And I quit my job. That's right. Shit.
And I gave all the money to the hookers. So
yeah. Stories like that confuse me. I mean, even every time I look into any kind of cult or any kind of like this kind of story, it astounds me, because I'm like, are people really that gullible?
Well, let me put it to you this way.
Clearly.
We voted for this United States, it seems, or at least our government, put Donald Trump as our president. So, okay. Yeah, we are that gullible.
Yeah, and also, clearly, Nexium, Heaven's Gate, the last 3 end of the worlds.
The urge to just want something to be real. I think that's where it comes from, but at the same time, it's like, don't do it too much. It's like, relax.
I don't know if for me, it's that I can't have that much faith in something. Like, I'm incapable of that kind of trust and faith. Or if it's more that, like, I'm just committed to going down with the ship because I'm just that kind of martyr. I don't know what my issue is, really. But, like, I kind of feel like if the end of the world is just going to have to take me by surprise.
Me too.
I'm just going to plan on being here until I'm not.
Yeah.
And it's going to surprise me. Like, I'll wake up one day and it'll be like, oh, the world has ended. I'm on the other side. I guess I'm not going to make any of those commitments I made. Someone did mention the world was ending, but I didn't believe it, and I've made plans. I would say astrology and astronomy are really, really well tied together. So there is some credence to the astrological movements because they are based on actual, like, physics. Mm-hmm. To some degree. So I think there's some credence there in regards to earthquakes and volcanic eruptions and other planetary and like weather-based movements and stuff. And seeing the field of astrological predictions in like a worldwide and societal manner has been really fascinating watching that develop, because people are doing really good work. And honestly, looking into the history of that, researching this podcast has shown that over the centuries and centuries, that kind of worldwide and societal-based predictions has been neglected by a lot. So a lot of that work has really happened in the last few decades.
I'm going to quote REM here, the end of the world as we know it. It's the end of the world as we know it, and I feel fine.
I feel fine.
I feel fine, too.
Yeah.
We're all Gen X, though. I just want to put that out, that we're all like, I don't believe in this whole generational bullshit, but we are the lost generation, the forgotten generation. We are the ones who are latchkey kids and left behind. Mm-hmm. So, of course, we kind of have this nihilistic, like, fuck off, I'm fine kind of feel. I think we're going to be fine, and y'all should keep planning on your futures. Big, bright, beautiful futures. We're moving out of the age of Aquarius and into the age of Pisces. I don't believe in a lot of afterlives, but I'm really in favor of Nirvana. As a band and a place. I'm just going to read this Gen X thing, like, for all it's worth. All right, so that being said, don't throw mistletoe at Balder.
Mm-hmm.
Be good to each other.
All right.
And that's your daily allotment of cheese.
All right, and that's how we're going to end this podcast. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everybody. Thank you for listening to the We Witches 3 podcast. For show notes and links, please go to www.wewitches3.com.